Hello everyone, and welcome again to Virtual Design Master. We are back here, and this is a particularly exciting day for us here because we're shifting the gears a little bit. As you know, at Virtual Design Master, we're all about being able to engage with folks in the community. That's a big drive about what we're doing here, and of course to be able to highlight and showcase the talents of folks that are among our community. And this is a great opportunity, as well as to be able to bring folks on who are our peers and our mentors, and help to get guidance from them on how we can be better at what we do, and think about what it would take to be a virtual design master. And of course, Virtual Design Master is especially thankful because we have our very own Virtual Design Master, Timothy Patterson, here. So Timothy, of course, was from Season 2, you may recall, and Timothy helped us out with our second challenge judging. So thank you for coming out again, Timothy, and welcome aboard. How did everything look? You've come out of the Cloud Challenge, and we're into the protection and this next stage. What did you think about the challenge that was ahead of our folks today?
Sure, it was a really good challenge. Kudos to Melissa in creating a challenge that really tries a lot of different areas there. It's interesting to see how the competitors evolve from one challenge to the next. We had some good submissions this time around.
Excellent. Yeah, it's one thing that we find quite often that we're amazed by how much effort is going into these and the detail level that comes out. So and of course, I would be remiss if we didn't introduce the rest of our team. This is nothing without the team that drives this whole organization. So with that, Melissa, you were first mentioned, so you want to quickly reintroduce yourselves, and what did you think about the challenge?
Hi everybody, I'm Melissa. You can find me on Twitter at vmiss33 and my blog at vmiss.net. I honestly thought it was a great challenge since I'm the one who wrote it. One of the big things we try to do here at Virtual Design Master is get people to do things they don't do on a daily basis and get them out of their comfort zones. So like Timothy said, I thought this was a good challenge to touch a couple different areas and bring some of the things we've been doing to the next level.
Excellent. And Angelo, of course, as co-creator and my partner in crime at the Toronto VMUG, tell the crowd about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Folks can find me on Twitter, Angelo Luciani, and at virtualize.com. Day for folks. People really stepped up, produced some great design ideas for these people to compete in. So it's going to be a good one today.
Excellent. And again, we mentioned we had such a huge field coming into Season 3 that it was tough for us to figure out the logistics and what we're going to do for our live defenses. So we twisted things up a lot this year. With our first challenge, it was around creating a paper-based logical defense. The most difficult task sometimes is to be able to convey your opinions and ideas effectively on paper. But as a virtual design master, that's a key ability. It's very important. We've got a lot of folks that are going to be working into jobs where they have only paper to be able to tell that story. And all of our challengers did a great job coming into that. And we saw the effort levels already there. Then, of course, we made them twist things up a little bit, and we took them out of the data center and into the clouds. With Challenge 2, it was all about taking the same concepts and moving them up to public cloud infrastructure. What it would take to do that, the same sense on applying assumptions, risks, constraints, and all of those criteria to make a good design. And again, to effectively convey that message on paper, it's something that as writers we all it's a very important tactic to be able to go with. We don't always have a chance to defend live. But luckily, here we are. We're at Challenge 3. And this was a big protection and sort of business continuity style challenge, another key skill when we think of being a virtual design master. And we have ourselves 3 of our virtual design master competitors here live tonight to talk about their defenses, and I'll introduce them here. So Abdullah, thank you for coming, especially I know we've got a time zone challenge for you, so thank you for coming aboard. If you want to introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Eric. My name is Abdullah. You can find me on Twitter on Dudes, and my blog is notes.dudes.net. I work for a solution integration company, and this is the very first design that I've tried or attempted in my work, because I don't do designs usually. I am involved in the technical in the implementation field more.
Excellent. Well, thank you and welcome aboard. Next
Thank
up,
you.
we have Harsh Gupta. So, Harsh, if you want to introduce yourselves again, you're on the other side of the world from where we are right now. So, welcome to Virtual Design Master Live.
Hi, I'm Harshvardhan Gupta. I'm working for HCL Technologies, and this is first time I submitted a design. Usually, I'm also into implementation and consulting. So my day job includes a lot of troubleshooting, implementing stuff. So it is good to be in Virtual Design Master Contest.
Excellent. That's a very important thing that we've seen a lot of folks that don't get this opportunity to do this as their day-to-day. So that's precisely why we love being able to do this. And as well, we also have James Brown. James, if you introduce yourselves to the group, welcome aboard tonight.
Well, thank you there, Eric. I'm James Brown. I work for a small little startup company that's probably about 5 years old. We're getting into consulting for virtualization and pieces like that, and I've actually been brought in as an engineer to be able to do those designs going forward. So my design experience has kind of started with that and has gone forward with these challenges that Melissa keeps on putting forward. So I look forward to the next one, I hope.
I have a feeling that she's gonna twist things up nicely as always for us. So, so Timothy, let's get started with the folks that are able to be here live, and we'll go in the same order that we had introducing everybody. So Timothy, what comments do you have about Abdullah, and then maybe we'll give him a chance to give a quick general defense on his design ideas.
Sure. Well, like before, I was really impressed by the excellent use of diagrams and tables. It makes the design very readable, very easy to understand. It ties together all the conceptual components. I definitely like that. I had a couple of concerns over the RTO and RPO table, in the fact that it's very difficult to achieve the 5 nines that you have listed, and I'm just not sure it can be accomplished in this type of setup. But with that said, everything looks pretty good. Is 500 days a reasonable turnaround for the initial seeding of the data, for the file server content specifically? If not, what would you do there? One thing I would like to see more of in the design itself is calling out to specific software versions as well. You mentioned ESXi, vSphere replication, and things like that, but knowing what version we're working with actually has a pretty big impact on some of the feature sets available in the design itself, and that helps kind of tie it all together. And then lastly, I was wondering around the decision with the Docker nodes as to why you're replicating the entire Docker worker. The whole concept behind the Docker movement is that everything's immutable, can be easily recreated from scratch. So those are my main questions, my main concerns, but also I have to give you a lot of praise going back to the diagrams and charts. It's a really well put together design.
So Abdullah, we've got, we'll let Angela be our timekeeper. Angela, you want to mark our 2 minutes, and we'll give you a chance to talk about your design decisions.
Okay. So
I'm going to give you 2 minutes to defend your design, and I'm going to be pretty strict on the time. So I will cut in. I will cut in on you. So your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay. In terms of the initial application of the file servers, the amount of data is huge, and since I'm using DFS, from my experience, when I'm replicating a huge amount of data and doing the initial seeding from the remote site to the target site, usually it doesn't return well with the results. So I usually do this. I replicate the data to a local storage, for example, and then I take it back. The time, presumably, the time it will take longer to replicate the whole 75 terabytes over the space network to the moon site. It should take more than 500 days because sometimes there are a lot of files, a lot of small files that will take more time to handle by DFS itself. In terms of the general table, it was an assumption. Because I'm using the protection at the application level, it's not very hard to achieve because I'm continuously replicating everything. So whenever Mars is down at some point, I will have everything up and ready at the same time. It's almost seamless. What else? Okay, concerning Docker, I have truly zero experience with Docker. So the only thing which I was keen on getting is that CoreOS is supported by ESXi. So it should be supported by the vSphere replication. That's why I took the decision to include it in my SRM design generally. And I think I have finished there, all in all. And thank you very much.
2 minutes on the dot. Well
Perfect.
done, Abdullah. And if I could just add, Eric, Abdullah mentioned he had zero experience with Docker or zero knowledge. I hope, and it's our hope, that through this exercise, how small or big it is, begin to learn Docker, you begin to get some experience, and it helps you further down the road. So, interesting note to take. But yeah.
So I'll add a couple of questions that came in from Byron, and we'll just add them as notes. And he also he echoed some of what Timothy talked about. 5 nines uptime is a lofty goal. Thinking enterprise, it's definitely that's the right tactic to take. But of course, there are real challenges around targeting a 5.9 uptime. And then the other note that he talked about was stretched VLANs. So of course, layer 2 adjacency is particularly tricky in real life. He says, it wasn't that it was a poor decision, but it is a definite challenge to look at when you're doing live implementations. But again, the choices were made to put those in there, and they were nicely justified in general. So all in all, we had really good response from your design. So thanks, Abdullah, and good luck as we head into the judging portion.
Thank you.
So next up we have Harsh. So Timothy, let's talk about Harsh's design, and then we'll give him an opportunity to give his defense.
Sure, sounds good. Harsh, I have to give it to you. You are very much improved this round over last round. I really like how your document structure came together for this challenge. Very, very marked improvement there. As far as the design itself, I really liked your choice of using vCloud Air's disaster recovery as a service. I think that's an excellent use case for this. As we all know, vCloud Air can virtualize just about anything, so Windows NT, not a problem. One thing I did have a little bit of a question, maybe / clarification on, was requirement number 7. It said it must be a fully supported solution. I'm making the assumption as the reader that is referring to just your project and not the operating systems involved in it, because again, Windows NT is not supported. One thing that I think myself and a lot of the other judges were in agreement on is the step-by-step guide that you posted towards the end of your document, the screenshots. That would be the sort of thing that would be excellent in an implementation guide, but not necessarily the overall design document. So I'm kind of curious why that was thrown in there. I really liked your use of Orchestrator to help automate things. But there was a little bit of concern over your fail-back procedure. It was touched on very lightly, and if you could explain what you were intending to do there, that would be great.
Sure.
So, Angelo, if you want to take us through the process, you know the deal.
Okay, Harsh, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I will again cut in on you once you go over it. So your time starts now.
So, hi. So vCloud Air is decided because we have a quite large applications or quite different applications to cover to be protected. Like we have Exchange, Legacy, Windows NT, we have MariaDB clusters, and we have Docker here. So I decided vCloud Air Disaster Recovery as a service because vCloud supports most of the available operating systems, and which are also not supported by their OEMs or software vendors are also supported on vCloud Air. So point number 7 is like fully supported. Like our architecture must be supported by cloud vendor. This is what I want to mention there. And another thing, and I made some assumptions here, like our window file servers, they are 10% utilized to cut down on the seeding requirement, and we are using offline seeding so that hard disks are shipped to Moonbase and will be seeded offline. This is what I did here. And on the implementation part, these are the steps to actually required to protect VMs. And on the failback side, we will be using vRealize orchestrator and will create a workflow so that a person who is going to recover the data center will not run to so many different things. He can just enable a workflow and will do failback or failover as and when required. So that's all.
Well done, Harsh. Well done.
Excellent. Yeah, again, I think all the other judges echoed the same thing that Timothy noted, Harsh, that you took a lot of the feedback that was given to you from the first 2 challenges, brought that forward
Yes.
into this document. So great work, and good luck as we head into the final judging here in a little while. And that brings us up to our third live defender here, Mr. James Brown. So, Timothy, what were your thoughts on James's design, and what questions do you have for him to bring into his defense?
Sure. I liked your design, James. I thought it was a sort of brave decision to create your own infrastructure in both places. I like that. A lot of low-hanging fruit existed with some public cloud offerings, but you started from the ground up there. I did have a couple of things that I really want to point out and get some clarification on, especially as it resolves to your ESXi hosts and their network uplinks. You mentioned that each ESXi host has 2 10-gigabit interfaces, but there aren't any details as to how the virtual switches are configured, if you're using port ID routing, physical NIC load routing between everything. I guess my main point here is what happens if a vMotion operation kicks off and completely saturates the network path? What happens then? I'm looking for detail around that in the design itself. Just a curiosity question, why are we using Windows for the Platform Services Control in vCenter? Just a curiosity, now that the Linux vCenter server appliance is out, stable, feature parity, it's just a thought there. Couple things I did want to call out, though. You mentioned that you're using vSphere Update Manager, VUM, for both VMware and Windows patches. But to my knowledge, VUM hasn't supported Windows patches since before version 5.0 was released. Just curious what's going on there. One of the interesting tidbits I liked about your design is I did not know that the backwards compatibility licensing with Microsoft actually supports Windows NT. So that was a cool research item there. Um, I feel like I'm picking on you. It looks like CentOS and CoreOS are kind of used interchangeably. I'm sure it was just due to your time constraints putting the design together, but CentOS is not CoreOS. Um, and a couple last points here. The web server details in your application design. You have them listed as running Apache with CentOS, but the design or the challenge requirements actually dictate that they run Internet Information Service as a Microsoft SQL Server. So again, I question what's going on there a little bit. And the very final point I have on yours is I really like the use of your replicated platform services controllers. However, you have a load balancer in the mix. Can you explain what the load balancer is doing there? What is actually doing the load balancing, and is it actually a single point of failure?
All right, so this brings Angelo in. Angelo, let's give James his time. You know the deal.
Yeah, I think we may have to give James 4 minutes on this. Just kidding, James. Just kidding. Do your best in 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
Well, it looks like I messed up quite a little bit on this one, so I'll see what I can do to defend. The ESXi, yes, the 10 gig uplinks. Virtual distributed switches would be used. Understandable, I need to put that into the documentation going forward. NIOC will also be used to actually limit that vMotion pieces because, yes, I don't want to flood 10 gigs of vMotion across that and just kill everything. The good reason why I went with the Windows version of vCenter is I have not actually tried the version 6 of the actual appliance as of yet. It's actually sitting in my lab. I haven't turned it on yet, so I don't feel comfortable with it yet. I've worked with the Windows interface for a very long time, so I've got a familiarity of how that goes. The vUpdate Manager, that was something that I must have missed. My understanding, I think it was in 5.5, and I thought it came to 6.6. That's something I'll have to research and make sure that, yeah, if that's true, I completely take it out. CentOS and going back and forth between CoreOS, yeah, that was my issue. More than likely it was CoreOS across the boat. I use a lot of CentOS in my data centers, so I'm sure I was thinking about that when I was doing it. Web servers, complete and utter miss. That was completely my fault. Missed the boat on that. I completely and utterly understand IIS should have been used, the Windows servers, network load balancing, pieces like that. The load balancer that is actually on the PSC. I used to work for a company called PCS, so that's where that comes in. The load balancers actually has those interfaces, the SSO and everything set up on both stations. So the load balancer was actually in there just in case. If one actually physically failed, it would automatically fail over to the other. That's why the load balancer actually sat in place.
Great, good job.
Made it.
Just under 2 minutes. Good job. And I just want to quickly share with folks. Don't get discouraged when it sounds like the judges maybe sounds like he's picking on you or anything, because it's not about that. It's about helping identify areas in your design doc where you can improve, and get better. And as you move along the competition, you'll only get better.
Absolutely.
Angelo is absolutely right. We're not trying to pick on anybody per se. We're trying to point out certain things. And believe me, I was in the hot seat last year. I fully understand the time constraints going into these documents. I know that it's very little to do a lot, and we're just trying to point things out to help you improve. And we've already seen improvements across the board with each candidate as we move forward.
And some other notes that came in from the judges. So Brian Kirsch, I particularly like this one. He says someone finally listed aliens as a risk. About time. So that is a very interesting point. There's assumptions and risks, and it was a nice little nod to stuff. And again, that's that sort of detail level that you found that when reading the document, it may not have appeared like it was out of the ordinary, but in fact it was the first mention of it. So those are little details that really help to bring the overall thing design forward. So very, very cool. And Brian did also say good job on listing out the HADRS rules. That was a very interesting point. Again, those specific details that are helpful in bringing that design on paper and bringing it up. Byron did agree with you that yes, DR is evil. And Byron did have some questions around Prism, and it was noted by Brian as well. Sorry, that gets confusing. That there was some reliance on sort of the Nutanix platform, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But again, as we go through into these challenges, it's important that you be able to justify those decisions. And of course, our grand prize provider, Josh, will definitely be very happy to see Nutanix in the mentions. But again, it's not necessarily about that. It's just more about whatever solution you provide, being able to justify that, and that's important. So again, very, very good job, James. So now we're going to move across our folks who were unable to join us. So Dennis, George is doing some actual work tonight, so Dennis wasn't able to join us. So we'll just list through some of his comments. So Brian mentioned, he says, I find it interesting that he also discounts the NT boxes. However, I like his concept use of the cloud for DR. He was a bit light on technical details. However, much of the grid is glossed over. So there was some sort of more generic content in there. Again, some good knowledge to some of the design, but a little bit more detail could have been used. Byron made a note. He said, I liked the inclusion of the runbook at the end, and overall he agreed with Brian that failover to cloud is not the hard part per se. And he also brought up something that Timothy mentioned, which was fail back. When we talk about failing, is one piece, but being able to return to home is an important step, especially when doing BCP and DR designs. So let's look at Dennis's design. Timothy, what do you have to say about Dennis? He doesn't have 2 minutes, so we can thoroughly ravage him here right live.
Well, it was a good design. I did enjoy it. I did have to point out a couple of areas. One is that he listed the Microsoft Exchange Server version at 2003, but if you're running it on Server 2012 R2, you would need your domain functional level to be at the older, I think it can go up to 2008 era, but that it wasn't specified anywhere, so we were left scratching our heads a little bit. Just one of those things that should be included in a design document. Goes back to needing to know what versions of the software you're working with. There wasn't really any mention of how the initial synchronization of the bulk data to the moon, especially for the file servers, will be handled. Docker instances, again, are replicated wholesale. They're intended to be immutable objects, kind of throwaway, recreate sort of thing. So I wanted to call that out yet again with this design. It was interesting in this design, he mentioned that there were going to be two clusters, one running ESXi 5.1 because it was the last version to support Windows NT officially as a guest. It just makes me wonder if it's worth the trade-off, and I understand your justification for doing so, but having two separate clusters because ESXi 6 is where CoreOS becomes officially supported. So he was running two different software or ESXi cluster versions here. I almost wonder if going unsupported would have paid off in the overall architecture. And what I mean by that is running Windows NT inside of ESXi 6. It works. It's not officially supported. It's just one of those kind of questions I had out there.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Timothy. And I know there was, again, these are all great designs. It's very interesting to see the different approaches that people take and different things. It becomes challenging at this point for us to think about, what is a less attractive design because they all have some really, really keen points on them. Next up, we're going to look at Lubomir Zvolensky. So Lubo is on vacationing and was unable to join for that. And he actually sent me his trace route and showed me his latency from where he was. He made a great attempt to actually bring himself on board, but unfortunately he had near to 1 second of latency. So good on him for making those notes. I like that kind of technical acumen. Timothy, what did you think about Lubo's design?
Well, it had some very strong points, and then there were some points from like finding myself wavering back and forth a little bit. A stretched cluster was used in this design. It seems very risky, and the reason I say that specifically is you point out and you actually call out the risk where you could end up in a split brain situation if the interplanetary link goes down. You also mentioned that it requires manual intervention to prevent things such as IP conflicts and things like that after such a situation occurs, and that downtime might actually incur as part of that cleanup process. You did some comparisons with the stretch cluster versus SRM. I agree with some of the points. I also have to disagree with some of the points. SRM can be set up to recover virtual machines into a completely new network domain. It doesn't have to be the same subnets and everything. So you could, in theory, bring up a DR site while you still have your primary site online side by side without doing the DNS cutover. That's just one of the examples. So that part made me go a little bit, but then you really redeemed yourself with the Core OS and Docker component. You absolutely know what you're talking about in this area. I love that section of your design. You have etcd and some of your other service discovery protocols out there. The only question I have around the Core OS section is why not pixie boot your worker nodes instead of relying on vSphere HA to protect them? And the reason I say that is because you're using these dynamic services with your environment, your workers essentially become throwaway. They don't have any state. So why not build out an infrastructure where you could pixie boot, really protect that management that spawns those instances, and then you have less that you have to replicate, less that you have to worry about in the overall architecture. I think that's really all I had with this design.
Great. Well, thanks, Timothy. Good notes. Brian Kirsch also mentioned about he's an interesting approach in using the stretched cluster between planets. He was a little concerned with life-critical systems, but he liked the out-of-the-box approach. Good details on the applications, but presented both positive and negative. The design doc is about your design and moving it forward, not leaving it to the audience to move it forward for you. So that was an interesting note in there. Byron also added some thoughts. He showed that he had a clear understanding of the technology. Really loved the use of bringing in console and etcd, service discovery. So those details were definitely high on the judges' list. So that was very good to see the depth of knowledge that we have to have as virtual design masters. This is an important piece. It doesn't just end at the hypervisor. It moves much further up the stack. So with that, we're going to move on to our final design for the night, and this is Stephen Villion. So Stephen was unable to join us directly, so we're going to just chat on Stephen's design. I'll bring up Brian's comments first before we go to Timothy. So he said, great detail on both backup and DR, plus a nice breakdown of the physical versus logical issues. So Brian gave a nod to the design. And Byron had some points. He says, very, very interesting. He says, a great discussion on time service, so important. Again, small details that can be really big when we think about an actual design. When we go to the implementation phase, that stuff that will get picked out, and we never want to have to go back and add tons of appendices just to make it work. He said, clear mastery of all topics and great presentation. He was very pleased. And one question he did have was why OpenSVC and replicating the containers. Again, this is a theme I think that was brought up earlier, that containers give us that immutable infrastructure. There was assumptions put into the design that you could have that assumption that it was immutable, repeatable, and yet there was some DR wrapped around that. So that's an interesting note. So Timothy, what do you think about our design for Stephen?
I really appreciate some of the humor found throughout the design. The design itself was great. I think it's a very solid design from start to finish. Some of his comments, business trip, driving and typing is apparently frowned upon in some countries. That made me laugh a little bit. As well as his comments about one of the assumptions is that Einstein has been proven wrong about the speed of light, because the challenge lists 10-second latencies from Mars to Moon, and he apparently has proven that wrong under our current understanding of physics. However, getting serious and actually looking at the design, one of the requirements actually calls out that you are trying to minimize the cross-link laser bandwidth usage. I'm just curious as to why that was thrown in there. There isn't really any indication that the link was designed to be used for anything else, but at the same time, maybe in your storyline, it makes sense. I really love the fact that you called out logical disasters versus physical disasters. So every one of our competitors touched on the physical disaster, something going very wrong with the infrastructure itself. You called out logical disasters, where you have a sysadmin accidentally runs a drop table on the master, or a buggy Microsoft patch takes down the whole Windows environment. So you included backups in addition to DR to accomplish that, and that was very strong. I definitely like that approach. The overall design itself was a stretched application approach. So each data center, the one on the Moon and the one on Mars, were both active-active, and the applications actually spanned both locations. It made a lot of sense for this type of setup, and it eliminated a lot of the split brain cases that could have come up. Like Byron, I also question the use of OpenSVC for the Docker replication and clustering. A little confusing there as to why we'd include that. Maybe you have familiarity with it, which is a justification, but I'd like to see that in the document itself if that's the case.
Good stuff. Well, thanks, Timothy. So again, we saw a lot of very interesting notes, interesting designs, and great job across the board. Now, Melissa, you brought us this challenge, and what are your thoughts on how the competitors took on this challenge, and what you think about what you were looking for in the design?
I think everybody did a really good job, and they really kind of did what we asked them to. Yeah, some people might have missed one or two things, but everybody showed a really good, clear methodology of how they did things, why they did things, and kind of solving the problem we had.
Excellent. So, Angelo, this is where the challenging part of our night comes. We'll lead, though, of course, with the good part of the night. As we mentioned, this was our first opportunity to introduce our flash prizes. So, along the way, we get to give some little special nods to folks, and this is thanks to the great support by some of our sponsors. So, Angelo, if you want to talk about Jason, and then let's talk about who is going to be our Flash Prize winner this week.
I will hand that back over to you, Eric, and you can give out the good news on the Flash Prize.
All right, so we will leave you with the last piece of news. So we want to send a special thanks to Jason Langer. So Jason can be found online. He's at Virtual Langer. Jason is a member, a co-leader of the Seattle VMUG, and a great member of the vExpert and VMUG community. A real great person, who's helped us, personally and professionally. We really enjoy working with Jason. So last year he donated a $100 Amazon gift card, and we want to thank Jason as he has done that again for Season 3. So Jason, thank you very much. And there's a lot of different criteria that went into this, and so while everybody had amazing designs in their own ways, a lot of the judges kind of moved one up towards the top, and that was Stephen. So Stephen Villion is our winner this week for our Flash Prize. So Stephen had a lot of interesting ways that he dealt with, all the different details in the documents. So good job to everybody. We wish we could share this amongst the whole crew, but don't worry, there's still going to be opportunities to win other Flash prizes, and as well, of course, go for our grand prize. You're getting close to the finale, and you can almost smell the end here. So again, congratulations to Stephen on that, and thank you again to Jason Langer. Angelo, so let's lean into the unfortunate part of the evening, which is when we have to talk about who's not going to move forward with us.
Yeah, this is the hardest part, and I guess I'm the best equipped for it. But one thing to point out real quick before I get into it, for the other participants, is to make sure you take the time to check out each other's designs once we publish them. Take out what you think is good from it, and maybe somehow apply it to your next design based on the comments from the judges. So I'll leave that little bit of wisdom with you folks. Now the hard part. I try to say this with a smile on my face, figure that. But Abdullah, Harsh, James, this is really tough. On to the next round. Lubomir will not be moving on to the next round. I guess you guys can, take a breath now. Put some smiles on your faces. Come on, guys.
Yeah, it was tough, to see, and again, kudos to Lubomir on a lot of the work that was done, particularly, he's dealing with, he's literally on vacation and providing time and effort into this. So, phenomenal work. But unfortunately, there's specific stuff that we kind of saw that led some of the other designs to look at something to go forward. So again, congratulations to Lubomir for getting this far. It's a challenge in itself, and we wish him the best of luck going forward. So we'll make sure that we send our best to him directly, of course. So with that, we now are down to our final group as we head into the next challenge, and that, of course, is where Melissa gets to tell us the good news.
Everybody's so happy they made it to the next round, and I guess we'll see in a couple minutes if they really are happy they made it to the next round or not. I will say that this is a second version of the challenge. We kind of decided the first one was a little rough, so we tried to make it a little easier. So I think you'll all be pleased with this. I don't think it's going to be too terribly difficult, but again, it's probably going to force you outside your comfort zones. So now that we've established ourselves across the solar system, it is time to make plans for taking our home planet back from the zombies. Select teams of humans and robots will be sent back to Earth to attempt to secure different areas across the globe. We will, of course, need working infrastructures to help us as we reclaim the planet. Chances of sending IT people back are pretty slim, so you will need to create an orchestrated system to rebuild the infrastructures. We know this is not an easy task, so we're going to start small. Our test will be a simple web application that displays the text, "Welcome back to Earth." Since we are evaluating the best way to accomplish orchestrating our infrastructure, you will need to use 2 different orchestration tools, 2 different operating systems, and 2 different web servers. Because we don't know what type of infrastructure we're going to end up with, we could end up with a mixture of equipment and operating systems. The web servers must run inside of a container. Share your code and build instructions so that a complete walkthrough is available. Make sure to include dependencies your application may have. That's not so bad, right, guys?
So we have our first required inclusion of containers. This is always an interesting part of it. You know, we're moving further up the stack. While it may seem like it's outside of the traditional coverage area, you know, we've seen some really interesting stuff. And, you know, in one way, I think everybody should count themselves lucky because Lubo was particularly adept at detailing information on containers. So in one way, you know, it's unfortunate that we couldn't see that coming into the next design. But at the same time, for all the folks that are remaining, this is, you could probably breathe a sigh that you know that you've still got a good shot at this one. But that said, you know, we're getting into the final couple of challenges here, and this is where there's going to be, you know, more detail that we're going to look for, and we're going to start to see judges diving in a little deeper into this. So we want to wish everybody good luck. We will send out the information, and we're going to give you a little bit more time because we know there's a little bit more technical requirements involved here. So you'll get a new delivery date on the other side, and of course we'll structure the defense around that as well. So Abdullah, Harsh, James, and of course to our other folks who aren't able to be here today, to Dennis, and to Stephen, congratulations on making it on to the next round. Good luck with the challenge, and for all those that want to watch, just keep your eyes on virtualdesignmaster.com, and we will be publishing the next live hangout. We will publish all the designs. Angelo, of course, we're going to see those on shortly. Angelo's been very kind to keep those rolling, and it's an important part of what we do in sharing of what things are. So, Melissa, we saw a few cringes. What do you think? Do you think our folks are ready for this one?
Yeah, I think it's not going to be that bad. Really, it's just going to be kind of learning a little bit about how the orchestration tools work. Really, I mean, a web application in Docker to display a line of text you could probably do in about 20 minutes. It's not so bad. That's why it's just a little web application with some text. It's not anything crazy. So I think it's going to challenge them in a different way and force them to look at a different aspect of, you know, virtual design. But I think it should be good. I think they'll enjoy it, dare I say. I guess we'll find out next week.
And Timothy, you're well versed on web application infrastructure, and so what do you think? It's still fairly open-ended. There's a lot of ways they can tackle this. Could that be a difficulty in going into this next challenge?
You know, having a lot of options can sometimes be a bad thing, but in this case, I think the challenge is spot on. As we're moving forward in the industry, the days of your, so to speak, traditional administrators and architects are slowly coming to an end. We're kind of moving more and more towards the DevOps mentality, so you're going to have to familiarize yourself with orchestration tools. Our jobs are becoming automated, so it's a good step in the right direction with this challenge.
So, Angelo, we wind down our now delivering into our second to last challenge, where we're getting close to the big stuff. And let's wish everybody good luck. And of course, again, thanks very much to Jason Langer for bringing our flash prize this week. Abdullah, Harsh, James, hopefully we'll be able to bring you on for our live defense next time as well. And we look forward to seeing the designs you have to bring. So on behalf of all the team at Virtual Design Master, we want to thank everybody for watching. For those who are live, it's always great to have this live audience. Thank you for taking the time out. And for those who are watching this recorded, don't forget to send any feedback to all of our competitors, to us at the, on the team, and use hashtag Virtual Design Master, and be part of the social sharing. And we look forward to bringing some details next week about our VMworld visit and what kind of adventures we may get up to there. So, so good luck to everybody, and thanks again, and we will talk to you all on the next episode.